Hi, welcome to my channel, or if you're new here, my name is Grace, and today we are going to pick apart some hot takes, some controversial book opinions, which for me, some of them are a little bit juicy, and I can't wait to dive in. Now, first things first, if you are new here or if you've not watched very much of my content, then just know that I am always honest. There's one thing I am, it is upfront, honest, and I tend to just say it how it is. So in the reading industry, in the reading world, in the bookish communities, there's so many controversial opinions floating around, and I'm only going to touch the surface on some of them because the debates that happen across social media, primarily book talk, which is where I started as a content creator in the bookish community. And let me just tell you, the opinions of people on that app are absolutely wild. So let's dive into it. The very first one that I'm going to start with actually came up on my feed a little while ago, and it really made me think. And I tried to answer it on TikTok, but I couldn't articulate myself quite how I wanted to at the time. But essentially, it's whether you can rate or review a book if you have DNF'd it. Now, this led to a very interesting discussion from so many people, because I understand partially that you can't really rate a book that you've DNF'd because you haven't consumed all of it. You haven't completed all of it. So you don't have a big round picture in which to form your rating. And I do know that some books can start really, really poorly and then end on a really, really ace note, or vice versa. I understand that. However, for me personally, right, I have a role now within the bookish world where I review the books that I read for you guys. I make content about the books that I read for you guys, and I tell you everything I feel about what I've consumed. Now, I see one thing that so many creators do, and bear in mind I am speaking about this from a creator point of view. I feel like I've got like a double fold on this, because I have a separate account that is very, very sizable over on TikTok. It's got a 900,000 plus following. And I see so many creators fall victim to the, it's going to change your life. Oh my God, this is amazing. You have to have this product. It is literally my new go-to. I see so many people fall for that. And in the bookish community, that is the last thing that I feel is a responsible way to influence. If every single piece of content I made was about 4-star reads, 5-star reads, the best book you will ever read, life-changing reads that change my brain chemistry, you get my drift? That's not constructive. Like, if I made a video just for every single book that I loved and left out the books that maybe I didn't gel with, I didn't enjoy, I didn't kind of get pleasure from, where am I being honest with my consumers and the people that are watching my content? So although I cannot technically rate a DNF, and I do tend to try and avoid rating one on, say, Goodreads and things like that where I can review them, and I can publicly review and state why I perhaps DNF'd, why I didn't feel like I could get through the book, why I didn't enjoy it, and what the flaws were that I found in it. It doesn't mean that that's going to prohibit somebody else from picking up that book. It doesn't mean that I'm being nastily, deliberately critical of it. In fact, I think I'm delivering constructive criticism, but I do think it is incredibly important for me to say, actually, I DNF'd this book, and this is why I DNF'd it. And I am going to review the portion of the book that I did read and what led me to that point where I said, actually, I don't feel like I can continue with this anymore. I think being able to DNF a book is actually really quite important, and it's a big skill that I've picked up over time. When I first kind of merged into content creation around books, I didn't feel like I could DNF. I felt like I had to finish every single book. For example, Iron Flame, such a slog, absolutely couldn't stand it. Wish I DNF'd it. There's so many books that I look back on, I'm like, I wasted my own time reading them because I was too scared to just DNF, or I thought I'd get to a point where it would change and I'd enjoy it, and actually that never happened for me. So as controversial as it might sound, I try to avoid star rating a book that I've DNF'd, even though, to be fair, the star rating is a completely flawed concept anyway, because what might be my 5 star is definitely not going to be somebody else's 5 star. But I do try to avoid doing that. But I do review them, and I do let my viewers know and try to understand, without completely bludgeoning the author or the book, why I have DNF'd it. And I do think that's important. I do think, reading being such a subjective thing, it's so important for us to be able to say, actually, I didn't enjoy this book because of this, or I didn't even finish this book because of this. So take it as you will, but I don't think there's anything wrong with reviewing a DNF. One of the biggest battles I see in the bookish industry, and this one really annoys me, actually, it really upsets my soul, is people having this attitude and this superiority complex that audiobooks do not count. Like, can somebody please explain to me where an audiobook does not count as consuming a book? You could be having a conversation with somebody and you could be talking about a book that you have both consumed, you have both absolutely loved. You can be talking about the prose, the characters, the writing style, and then if they turn around and say, oh, I actually listened to the audiobook of it, are you going to say, oh, you didn't read it then? It doesn't work that way. The joy of books and of stories is that you get to verbally tell them anyway. So you have to consider that audiobooks are just a different kind of consumption of the book. You are still consuming it. It's the same as, almost like, I can eat the banana whole or I can smoothie the banana. I'm still consuming a banana. I can't believe I've just used that analogy. But it's true. They do count. And also, they're an accessible way for some people. You know, what if somebody's partially sighted, or they're blind, or they're severely dyslexic, and they are unable to consume a book in a written format? Why does an audiobook not count? It does. It absolutely does. Some people's processing is much better verbally than it is visually. It's such a wild, crazy brain thought that some people have, that audiobooks just don't count. And I'm like, you're basically, what you're trying to say is, I am here and you are below me. If you listen to an audiobook, they kind of self-hierarchied, and that is just something that I cannot gel with. And this is coming from somebody that doesn't like audiobooks. I have tried audiobooks. I have desperately tried to listen to books, especially books that I'm about to DNF. I'm like, oh, maybe I'd like the audio instead. I just can't get behind them. I don't like them. I don't enjoy them. But I think they're so valuable to the bookish community, to the industry as a whole. It's a perfectly accessible way of consuming a story, of consuming a book. Stop with that narrative that they don't count, because they absolutely do. And this whole holier than thou thought process, because somebody decides to consume their books via audio, is, quite frankly, vile. It's vile. It's sad, it's vile, and it's toxic. Done. The next two run in line with one another, okay? And these are quite mega hot takes, so buckle up a little bit, because I feel like this is where it might get a little bit spicy. So there is this view going around that reading is not a trend, and book talk is ruining reading. They're two separate takes, they're two separate opinions, but they seem to be falling within the same kind of category. Now, I've had it accused to me. So when as I mentioned earlier, I have a large TikTok account that's separate to my book talk. And I've had that account for 4 years. I've been growing it steadily for 4 years. It's my full-time job to run that account now. And when I started Book Talk, and the only reason I started it was because my granddad passed away. He was a massive lover of reading. I've been a lover of reading since I was a child. I've always hid it because it's considered to be a little bit nerdy and a little bit weird. But I spent half my childhood in libraries, and I just needed a break from my normal reality on social media. So I started a book talk where nobody knew me, and I could just come on and talk about books, because books at that point were my escape from what was happening in my real life. So when I started that, I was accused so much of jumping on the book trend. And it was actually my mum that came to the surface and was like, Grace has always been a huge reader. Grace has always had a book on the go. Grace, basically lived in a library as a child. Like, she came to my defense a little bit, and I took a step back and I was like, all of a sudden I am seeing influencers, celebrities, content creators on the rise talking about books, looking at latest book releases or putting photos of books on their Instagram stories. And I don't personally believe it's that reading is becoming a trend. What I believe is it's becoming more acceptable to talk about reading. So rather than when I was growing up, you were considered to be a nerd if you read, and it was almost something that was like shameful. It was very much like untangible intellectual thing to be a reader, and it meant you were boring. Now it's actually like, no, we're going to talk about this and we're going to be accepting towards this. And actually, it's such a healthy thing to do. There's so many benefits, your mental health benefits, your empathy, your growth in just who you are as a person. There's so much positivity to reading that now actually these bigger voices that do have these huge platforms are able to talk about it, which means the smaller voices that maybe don't have a platform feel like they can talk about it too. It's just opened up that gap. And this goes in line with the notion of BookTok is ruining reading. Now, again, this comes across as holier than thou, I am better than you. If people are going to literally run people down because maybe they want to consume easy romances, or maybe they want to consume a ton of smut, and there's people out there literally making videos running people for consuming that kind of content and saying that essentially if you don't read classics you're not a reader, or if you don't consume other genres you're not a true reader. When actually it doesn't matter what you're reading, you're still a reader. It doesn't mean that BookTok is ruining reading. What it means is that it's opening up and diversifying other genres, actually making reading a much more rounded experience. You have not got to be intellectually articulate or have a degree or have a master's in the English language to be a reader. You just need to pick up a book and enjoy it. And ultimately, isn't the whole joy of reading about how that book makes us feel? Is that not the reason we're reading in the first place? Is because we want to feel a certain way, and that ultimately a book is delivering that. It doesn't matter if somebody wants to read nothing but dark romances. It doesn't matter if someone's favourite book in the world is Haunting Adeline. Why does that affect you? It doesn't. It has no bearing on your life. It has no bearing on the publishing industry itself. In fact, you have got some of the UK's most major publishers who were almost in financial ruin a matter of years ago. They were looking down a barrel with nowhere to go, and then all of a sudden they're turning over billions. They're turning over more than they have ever turned over before. And it's not necessarily because of overconsumption. It's not because books are becoming like fast fashion. What it is it's more and more people are now reading. More and more people, where we live in a society that is on these mini screens, or it's on a TV, or it's on a laptop or on a computer, are choosing to step away, and they're actually choosing to pick up a book and devour it. Now, please tell me what isn't more beautiful than that. Please tell me how BookTok or even BookTube, because I'm going to be honest, I'm on both platforms and I see the same kind of book like content on BookTok as I do on BookTube. BookTube is just longer. So please tell me how on earth it is ruining reading. It's not. It's not. It's just once again such an archaic, fossilized kind of I'm better than you attitude that people are taking towards absolute strangers that are just enjoying the process of picking up a book, enjoying its contents, and probably sharing these contents as well. Like, openly making a video and sharing their thoughts and their feelings and encouraging other people to talk, encouraging other people to read. There is a beauty in it. You do not have to like the books itself. Like, trust me, I'm not a fantasy reader. I'm not. And most fantasy content I will semi-skip past. I don't really absorb it because fantasy is just not a genre that I've fallen in love with. But would I knock somebody else for loving fantasy? No, I wouldn't. Have I consumed books like Haunting Adeline, Credence? My current read is Birthday Girl by Penelope Douglas. I have consumed them. Do I like them? Are they my favourite books? No, they're not. But I have consumed them because sometimes I just need a little bit of a break from my serious ones. Like, I have quite a varied, eclectic reading style. I'm never going to sit here and knock somebody else for what they enjoy reading. Like, for example, I'm probably never going to read ACOTAR. I'm never going to read it. Because I can't commit. I don't want to commit to that many books, and also I'm just not interested in it. I don't care enough for it to want to read it, and generally, like, these really BookTok popular books I tend not to read because they're just not my style. But that's fine. That doesn't make me a better reader than anybody else. It just means that we've got individual takes and we have individual likes and preferences, and BookTok is so far from ruining reading. It is unbelievable. In fact, the one thing that is ruining reading are the people that are trying to claim that BookTok is ruining it. Because if you are going to generalise hundreds of thousands of people into one area, like the people that are out there, like BookTok is only smart, so you're generalizing all of us, because actually that sounds like it's your For You page, and your For You page gives you what you're paying attention to. So if you're only seeing smart, that's because that's all you're looking at. If you actually took the time to peel the layer on BookTok and look beneath that and maybe look at some more varied content, you'll see that there are pages dedicated to thrillers, pages that are dedicated to just general fiction. There's pages dedicated to nearly every single genre. There's pages that are dedicated to just giving review upon review so that you can make your own choice. Stop marginalising people because you think you're better than them. I realise I got a bit passionate there, but I had to say it because it's one of my biggest bugbears. Watch me lose my job after I release this video. I'm gonna lose my job. Reading challenges are toxic. This is an interesting one, and this is one that I actually feel like I can get behind. So this is the first year I've ever set a reading challenge, and I only set a challenge of 40 books. And that's simply because I am an obsessive human. I will obsess over tasks, rules, numbers. I will obsess with them. And I sat there and I thought to myself, I was like, Grace, if you set yourself a goal to read 150 books this year, and you don't hit that goal, you're not going to forgive yourself. You're not. And then I was also like, what if something happens to one of my children and I can't read for a week? What if I get ill and I can't read for a week? What if I just hit a slump and I need a break and I just don't want to read for a week? I want to read because I enjoy it, not because I feel like I have to do it. So I set my goal at 40. I've well surpassed that at this point, and I'm going to continue surpassing that. But ultimately, when I see people, you know, they've got to June and they've already read 100 books this year, whilst I love that for them, and they may well be happy, there's going to be other people that aren't happy. And that could be because they've only read 5 books so far this year, which, let's face it, like, if you are an average human being, that kind of consumption is normal. It's not normal to consume hundreds of books per year. That's quite a niche thing to do. It's not normal to consume 10, 15 books per month. And sometimes people do consider, well, have they actually consumed that book? If they're reading that many per month, have they consumed them? And chances are, yes, they have. Because if you're anything like me, I don't watch TV. I don't really go out. I don't have a social life. I don't remember the last time I watched a film. I don't even have a TV in my room. I have one TV in my house downstairs and I never turn it on. Like, reading is my jam and reading is what I do. I get up in the morning, I sit down, I have my cup of coffee, I read a few pages of my book. I have a break during the day, I'll read my book. If I'm in the car on a drive, I'll read my book. Everywhere I'm going, I'm reading. But that's me, and that's not normal behaviour, and I know that. So some people will get upset if they maybe have only read 5 books this year, but they don't need to, because that's amazing for them. There's no comparative. Reading is not a race. Reading is not a competition. Reading is not a challenge. And I do think that these reading challenges are toxic. That is the one thing I do actually agree with and I can get behind. If I read 100 books this year, but then next year I only read 25, that's okay. I've still read 25 books. It doesn't matter. Like, I actually made a video earlier on this month, and I think this is what made me realise how toxic this is. So August has been absolute mayhem for us. We've got school holidays, the kids are off, we've been away, we spent a lot of August on holiday, we've had our kitchen redone this month. Life has been crazy, and I haven't read anywhere near as many books as I'd normally read. I think I've read about 5, and normally I'd be on like 8. And I made a video about it on TikTok, and somebody made a comment and they're like, I've literally read 1 book this month. And I realised how toxic my own video was and how toxic my own thought process was, that actually, oh, I've only read 5 books this month. That's not good enough. Grace, get off your pedestal, babe. What are you doing? 5 books is amazing. That's a good amount of books. Like, get with the programme. Get real, because ultimately that's 5 books more that you've read. It blew my own mind. So I think these reading challenges can really get under your skin. And like, even for me, like when it comes to content, I'll always do a reading wrap up every single month. I do a wrap up on TikTok. I need to start doing these over on YouTube actually, but I do a wrap up on TikTok of all of the books that I've read that month. And there have been months where I've been scared that I've not read enough. For real? Enough? So what if it's 1 book? I can still give you a wrap up of that 1 book. It doesn't matter. Like, nobody is going to judge me for having a life. It's okay. So unfortunately, that is one that I can agree with, and I do agree with. And next year, will I set a reading goal? Probably, but will I keep it quite small again? Most definitely. The last one we're going to talk about. When I make these kind of videos, I want to open up a positive discussion. I want to open up positive opinions, and I do not want to open up a platform that allows people to go at each other, create hate, or say negative things. Okay, that is that simple. Let's get that out of the way. If I ever see it in my comments, they will be removed, no matter what platform I'm on. So the last thing we're going to talk about is author hate. And specifically, there's a couple of authors that you do see, especially on BookTok, but also on BookTube and across social media in general, that are so controversial. As soon as you say their name, they're going to, you're going to Marmite. It's a one or the other. There is absolutely no grey area with these authors. And I have even seen people now making videos saying, if you recommend this author or this book, I will never listen to your opinion. I'm like, please, that is sad. Honestly, do better, because I cannot stand that brain thought of, I'm not going to listen to you just because you like that author. What are we in primary school? Like, do you want me to give you a hairbrush so that we can play bulldog and you can attack? Come on now. Where are we? We are adults. But, you know, there's a couple of authors that spring to mind straight off the bat. Frida McFadden and Colleen Hoover. Now, I'm quite vocal about, let's go with Colleen. I'm very vocal about Colleen, okay, in the sense that so many people recommend Colleen Hoover books to me. And I have read a couple of Colleen Hoover books when she first started to come to rise and she started to come to light. And we're going back years here. I read some. And do you know what? Do you know why I don't like Colleen Hoover? Just because I don't think her books are very good. I don't like them. And that is okay. I am allowed to have that opinion. For me, Colleen Hoover is, I do think she's quite problematic in her writing style. I do think that some of her writing glorifies certain situations and isn't necessarily upfront about it. Now, I'm going to preface this because I understand it probably sounds quite convoluted. So I will openly talk about Haunting Adeline and Credence or books like that, dark romances or just romances that are very problematic. But you know what? They are not trying to sugarcoat the fact that they are problematic. They are not trying to sugarcoat the fact that they come with a list of trigger warnings or a list of things that are wrong with them. And the author outright admits that. They know. And the thing is if you look into like the dark romance genre, for example, they are heavy on their trigger warnings in nearly every single book. You will be able to find trigger warnings. You will be able to find a warning that says, this book includes this. If you don't feel like you can handle that, this is your chance to stop reading. They actually care about this. And what I find with Colleen Hoover books is there are problematic situations in there that are being glorified in mainstream media, and I don't like that. It is that simple. There's been a few excerpts that I have read of books of hers where I'm like, why? Why is that in there? And just in total, I don't like it. Will I ever read a Colleen Hoover again? I might just do, just to stay relevant and to stay kind of on the ball with it. But it's not through but it's not through choice, and it's not an author that I'd enjoy. And it's a very similar notion, I suppose, to Frida McFadden. Everybody recommends Frida. You have people that are obsessed with Frida. Frida seems to knock out thrillers left, right and centre. They're not bad. They're actually not bad, but they're also not good. Like, there are much better options out there. I've read The Housemaid. It's the only Frida I've read. Would I rush to read another Frida? No, I wouldn't. It was all right. I thought it could have done with some trigger warnings, if I'm honest, because I do think some thrillers need a trigger warning occasionally. I'd say that Frida McFadden is an entry-level thriller. But once you're past that entry level, are you going to keep reading them? Probably not. They're very easy to consume. They're very quick paced. The same as Colleen Hoover. And that's the key. They're easy to consume. They're quick paced and they keep you reading more and more and more. But that doesn't make them a good book. And I'm not going to sit here and hate on the author because I don't know the author. I cannot run down an author because I don't know them personally. But what I can say is actually I don't like the reading style, the writing style. I don't really like some of the context. I don't really like how problematic some of the books are, and they're not honest about being problematic. And therefore, I'm going to choose to not consume them. It's the same as when we see people absolutely destroy authors for their political tastes. Like, that is, in many senses, it's a different entity to the book that they have written or to their work. It's not the same thing. And I think sometimes we have to be incredibly careful. Like, you see creators who have pages dedicated to thriller books, and they will literally run Frida McFadden down. You have people that will run down Colleen Hoover. Like, we don't need to be making that kind of content. We don't need to be doing that kind of thing. By all means, say that you maybe dislike that style of writing in the author's work, like I have here very openly, but we don't need to deliberately be making content that will tear the author down, because ultimately the only reason we're doing that is clickbait, and that is not okay. There we go. They are my hot takes, controversial opinions. I know that I have very strong opinions on some of these situations, and I know that you guys are potentially going to disagree with me, and please remember that's okay. We don't have to agree with each other. We can have completely opposing opinions and still respect one another. The joy of the bookish community and the joy of reading is that we may not always agree and we may not always see from the same standpoint, but ultimately we will always respect each other and we will always be kind to each other, and that is 100% how I want to leave this video, and hopefully the mindset that you guys will be sitting with whilst you're watching it, consuming it. As always, thank you for being here. I truly appreciate it. Seeing this platform growing, even if it's growing at a very slow pace, is really nice. It's really satisfying. And don't forget that I do try and post every single week on here. Hopefully I came across in a very kind of well-mannered and elegant way today, and hopefully we're not going to start any beef, because I just don't have time for that. Anyway, I am out. See you next week. Have the best day. Enjoy reading, whatever it is you're currently reading. Let me know what you're currently reading in the comments, actually. I need to I think I'm going to set up my October TBR, which I never do. I never do this. But I have a lot of books that I need to get through. They've been sitting on my shelf for far too long. So I might actually set it up. It's not October, is it? It's September. Jeez, I'm a month ahead already. I might set up my September TBR, start working through that, and actually make a video with you guys. I've got an idea. Right, I'll see you next week. Let me know how you feel about some of these things.